Right. My name is Rich Schmidt. We're here with Tim and Pierre Paradis. It's August 7th, 2024. We're at Paradis Vineyards in Silverton. Thank you both so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
First question to get things started is why wine?
That's a loaded question. I guess you have to start at the beginning for that.
All the way back.
Way back. So my parents bought the property in 1988, 89. We're in there. And my dad had a full-time job at the school district, the local school district here, and the property was farmed by my grandpa.
Owned by our great uncle.
Owned by somebody else, and then my parents bought it, and my grandparents and uncles kept farming it until 1990. My dad wanted to get into the farming thing, but continue to have his full-time job. And so he decided to plant grapes. And in 90...
He had the landscape business.
Yeah.
So that he didn't do the town job for a while.
Yeah. He
had a landscape business, and his crew, that he had for running lawns and keeping up people's landscapes, they didn't have any work during the wintertime, and the bulk of the manual labor a lot of the manual labor, at least in the vineyard, is done in the wintertime. So he was looking for some work for them.
So they planted the 12 acres behind us, and it's all Pinot Gris. In 90, when they planted the 12 acres, it was 15% of Oregon's Pinot Gris when they planted. So kind of a staggering number for 12 acres compared to what it is now, right? So they planted that in 90, continued planting. The next block they planted in 97, and then another block in 2000, and then another block in 2014. So
we planted our first in 18, and then again in 20,
and then again this year.
The year of the heat dome we planted.
Yes.
That's 21.
Yeah. Okay. Wine came because it's been in our front yard. Mm-hmm. So
For us.
yeah.
Mom and Dad have a different answer, but for us, we grew up in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's start with them then. So what was being farmed here before? And you mentioned wine grapes. Why the choice for wine grapes versus anything else?
What was being farmed here was row crops, so cauliflower, broccoli, and grass seed. And a long time ago, it was a sheep farm, and we have sheep again. That was my grandpa farming, our grandpa farming that, and then it transitioned to the first block of grapes to help keep his crew busy. And then that kind of grew. Wine didn't come into the picture until 2001.
2001, yeah, 2001.
I mean, obviously we were selling the grapes for wine, but we were selling to bigger wineries throughout the valley, not producing our own wine until I think it was 2001.
Yeah. Mom and Dad had a grower sales privilege license, and so they produced like 200 cases. Somebody produced 2,100 cases for them.
Just Gris, because that's all they had.
Gris, because that's all they had. And then they continued their label until 2006, and life just kind of got in the way. They had 4 kids. They were busy marketing it all themselves, and they were done. The whole time, though, they continued selling grapes to other wineries.
And that continues to be a large part of our business, is selling fruit, selling fruit to bigger other wineries, whatever.
2016, Pierre and I graduated from Oregon State and asked if Mom and Dad wanted to start the winery back up, and they said no. So it was our project. It was our project for the first 4 years.
We were both wanted to come back to the farm, but there wasn't really enough income, potential for his family, my non-existent family at the time, at least, and also Mom and Dad. So we had to have more income streams.
Pierre convinced me to start a winery, so now we're here. So it's been a little bit of a different path. We didn't just start in making wine. So we still sell about 85% to 90% of what we grow to other wineries. We're only making about 10 to 15% of what we grow into wine. So yeah, we started in a little itty bitty tasting room down in Mount Angel. It's like 2 to 3 tables. It's like 400 square feet, tiny. And then in 2020, right before the pandemic hit, we started building this and then opened in March of 2021. Yeah, 2021. So it's been going pretty good.
Let's talk about growing up with the grapes. What was your impression of grape farming? What was your impression of the wine industry when you were growing up?
I don't think we got a great representation of it because we're off the beaten track for sure. So I mean, we had a few neighbors that were, I don't know, in the industry, I guess. Some of whom was our cousins, and then other vineyards in the area. But they're all generally larger vineyards, more commercial fruit production kind of vineyards. So not. We really only knew the neighboring vineyards. We didn't really get to know other actual winemaking people.
On the grape side, we've known the community pretty through the grape side. I mean, that's kind of how we got our start into the wine industry, minus growing up on the farm. So Pierre started it first, but we did a bunch of custom contracting out in the vineyards, starting in 2014.
This is when I graduated high school.
So Pierre did it during the summers.
2012.
Hedging and leaf removing and a bunch of different stuff. So that kind of got our foot in the door.
Out into the
Network.
broader.
Yeah, it was kind of nice. So we got to know a bunch of different people before we actually, because up until that point it was all mom and dad. That was their vineyards, and then in 2016, we started managing it for them because they did lease it for a period of time. 4 or 5 years to Adelsheim?
Adelsheim, yeah.
Yeah, Adelsheim leased it for 4 to 5 years.
Hired me back to be a satellite manager.
Yeah.
They're obviously a ways away.
Just a bit.
But then after that was done, we kind of, instead of just jumping in as their employees, I guess, we managed for them in a somewhat of a convoluted arrangement. But it was just getting complicated having, like, sharing equipment back and forth and stuff, so it just was a way to simplify it.
Talk about getting to know the work and getting to understand viticulture and vineyard maintenance.
Pierre puts it in a great perspective. I mean, going to school too. So we grew up pruning, working, doing it all. I started school as an engineering student, and then took a 5-year break because I decided I wanted to get married and needed to pay for a wedding. So I was a mason for 5 years, and then came back to it and ended up back in viticulture at Oregon State. And then Pierre always says that we went back to school to learn why we did what we did.
Not how to do things, but why.
Why we're doing things. Learned a lot from mom and dad because they had to bumble through it because there wasn't really anybody to lean on, even in the 90s, early 90s through the 2000s, because there wasn't a ton of grapes in the Willamette Valley and not a lot of resources. And so I kind of count ourselves lucky because there is a lot more people we can bounce things off of when we run into an issue, and the industry is a lot bit, I mean, it's not huge, but it's larger than it was in the 90s. So I feel like we've had it a little bit easier than Dad did because
There's more resources available.
yeah, I mean, like all his resources were based off of all the research and stuff that had been done, experience done in California, because that had been there for a lot longer. But now that it's been established, there's more of a wealth of knowledge around. So, and I have found that I think we both found that it's a small community and people are happy to share their experiences with it too, and how to do something, how they did something, how they overcame a problem. So it's been nice. It's a small community, so people know each other. It's getting bigger though. So, yeah.
You mentioned why you do what you do. How I guess when you went to Oregon State, what changed for you? Was there anything were there ahas like we should be doing this, or were you kind of comfortable you've been doing things mostly the way you should have been doing them?
Few things changed, nothing dramatic, just tweaks. I mean, the system that they were using is when we took over is more or less what we're doing now. We're bigger now, so we're much more mechanized now. That's partly because of the availability of equipment, and partly because of economy of scale, being able to afford the equipment. But at the core, not a lot has changed really.
So describe sort of the farming operation or farming philosophy here.
Scared to say it, but as many tons as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we see ourselves as more of a commercial vineyard. So it's, the highest quality and the highest amount as possible that the land will let us produce, depending on the year, and it's, highest quality. And I mean, but we're torn, especially when we started making wine, because we see it from the winemaker side and the grower side now. So it's kind of like before.
We grew up as farmers when we were getting paid by the ton, but now we're in the wine industry, and
so it's kind of like, when you're just looking at it on the vineyard side, it's like as many tons as we can get to produce. I mean, because that's how you make your money. But then on the other side, it's, quality and what's going to make the best wine out of that grapes. Not to say that a high yield is not going to make quality wine. It's just, you got the balance. So, and before
clean and ripe fruit is the goal.
Yes. So, I mean, it's whatever you've got to do to achieve that. It's
a constant
balance.
Juggling act.
Yeah, basically juggling act.
We were just at 2 tons of the acre for forever. And it's not so hard. But, yeah. We work on some very vigorous sites that is challenging to the disease pressure and everything, because there's a lot of potential in the soil, and so you got to hang a lot of fruit to use up that potential, and it can have disease pressure. So this year's a rough year for that. Sounds like the more we talk to more people out in the valley, it's like, oh yeah, this is a rough year.
So on the grape sales side, tell me about developing those relationships with winemakers outside of yourselves. Who do you look for when it comes to selling grapes, and how do you kind of build and maintain relationships?
I would say we look for people that have the same mentality as we do. I mean, honestly, it's, easy. We're pretty easygoing people. We're not a lot of foo-foo when it comes to it. It's straight to the point. We're all here to make a living. So it's kind of like, as long as we can find people that communicate well, are open about what they're looking for, what we're trying to provide them, it's all about relationships to me. It's not, trying to get the highest dollar for something. It's more of a continued relationship to, as long as everybody's happy, you might as well continue a relationship. I mean, we honestly haven't had to cultivate that many relationships, because since Pierre and I got on board, we've been selling a majority of our fruit to the same people every year.
And as they grow, we grow, and they're just the first call.
Mm-hmm. So it's been pretty nice. So, but having feelers out there when you have more, it's nice. So, but it's
having lots of connections is nice to. As much as anything, get a feel for the market too. See what's out there.
So you mentioned when it first went in, all Pinot Gris. Tell me how the vineyard has grown and evolved in the planting since.
Kept going with Pinot Gris for quite a while.
For a long time.
We're just under half Pinot Gris. And most of the bulk of the Pinot Noir has been planted in the last 4 years, 5 years.
18.
6 acres of Pinot was planted in
2000.
2000. A few more acres in 2014, and then 35 now in 18 in 2020, something like that.
It gets convoluted.
Yeah.
It gets convoluted. But so just to touch on the varieties that we grow Pinot Gris, Pinot Noir, early Muscat, tiny little bit of Maréchal Foch, an even tinier amount of Leon Malo, and some Gamay Noir. That's a small amount though too. So it's majority Pinot Gris, Pinot Noir. We have about 5 acres of Muscat that does incredibly well where it's at. Baffled us the first year that it put a crop on. First year it produced, it was what, 10 tons to the acre. Last year it produced almost 16 tons to the acre. It was mind-boggling. Like, I had to go half the speed when we were harvesting it. It was pretty crazy. Yeah, it was a sight to see. So
A wall of fruit.
it was like knee to shoulder high, because we have 2 fruiting wires, so it's like knee to chest, and it's like just fruit everywhere. It was baffling.
That's incredible.
It was pretty. We were pretty baffled. Yeah, we had a lot of extra because we were definitely not contracted for that much fruit. So we made some bulk wine last year. So yeah.
So how many total acres planted now?
20.
120. Yeah.
We just planted 20 this year. So they're just babies popping out of the ground right now. But yeah, they'll
Just sticks in the ground.
no trellis or anything.
Yeah.
Just
Nothing
a,
but potential.
yeah. It's a field of sticks.
Yes. Yeah. So.
You mentioned obviously economy of scale as you've grown, more mechanization. Tell me about implementing that and deciding where and how best to use mechanization in a vineyard.
Leaf removal has been huge. We're using our leafing machines more and more every year, it seems like. And hedging has always been around. Dad and one of our uncles were one of the early innovators of mechanical hedging, at least in our area. Our uncle built one. Dad had some, like a lawnmower on the front of a tractor or something, hedging like one row at a time. And then my uncle drove in, so we got to improve on that, and built a hedger for him, and he builds them commercially now. And then mechanical harvesting, brought that in 2017. Started with our first harvester, and we've moved on to a different kind now.
Those are the big ones. I mean, I know we're not quite to the size where, there's pre-pruners and
there's different steps we could make, but just not quite big enough for the economy of scale for those. Yeah. So to pencil all that out.
The harvester was a big step for us, becoming more and more acceptable, in Oregon, and so it's really nice because you're in control completely. You still have the variables of the winery that you're delivering to, but it makes it a lot easier to time everything out and stuff. There's not as much of a human factor as when you're hand picking. Just the nature of the beast. We went from relying on a large group of people to Pierre and I picking our entire vineyard, and
in 3 days if we wanted.
Yeah, and it made a huge difference. Just consistency, and
can't really ask an employee to go 24 hours a day, but push comes to shove, we can.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not going to ask someone else to do that, but
and so we do custom harvesting as well for other people, and that has helped with our economy of scale. So we honestly we talked briefly about the community on this side, and there's a larger community of just growers, There's not a ton of wineries over here. I think there's like 15 of us total, 15 or 16 of us.
Wineries,
Yeah, wineries. And most of them are not large enough to, it makes sense to have a harvester. And, you know, there's more as it becomes accessible to have machine harvested fruit, then it's nice to be able to offer that to other people that can't afford it. Not even can afford it, it's more it making sense to afford one. Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. So that keeps us busy.
Yeah, when they can hire us and we just come in and do the whole thing for them, it's pretty nice for them.
Yeah. And that keeps us a lot busier, because if we were just harvesting our fruit, we'd be a lot easier month. But it's like, okay, well, we got to schedule this out, and then we got to move over to here, and then so it keeps us busy for a good month and a half.
And then we got to do winemaking in between somewhere.
Yeah. So, yeah.
It gets interesting.
We're back to talk about winemaking in a minute, but I'm curious about differences. You mentioned obviously mechanisms becoming more acceptable and the technology improving quite a bit. Tell me about what do you see in the fruit that comes in, mechanization versus hand. Are there differences? Are there things you're giving up or gaining?
We honestly have very little experience with hand-picked fruit, as far as in a winemaking capacity. Because we started our winemaking venture in 2017, which was the first year we got a harvester. So unless we do buy a few varietals that we don't grow, and some of those come in hand-picked. So outside of that, we don't have side-by-side comparisons. But I mean, I think our wine can stand up to anybody else's, as long as be on the same bar or whatever.
I think we have it a little bit easier. I shouldn't say easier. It's really nice because if we're picking grapes for our wines, we can pick them and run them straight to the press.
In an hour, they're
pressed juice versus having to haul it somewhere. So it's kind of, it's not a bad thing. It's just we kind of have the benefit of being able to schedule it when we want it and be done.
Pick it at the temperature that we want. And we're not, when we're making our own wine, we're not talking huge quantities. So we're able to pick it at the temperature that we want and immediately get it to the winery and get it pressed off, if it's white, of course. And so we're able to play with those variables a lot more than if we're harvesting for someone else, when we have to go all night or whatever, it's like, and it's truck after truck, rather than like these 6 totes are for us. So
these 6 rows are for us, and when it's done, it's done. So yeah, we get a little bit more nitpicky with it, which it's nice. I mean, that's like we were talking about the balance. It's like the winery side versus the vineyard side. It's like, I mean, we're growing all the grapes like we're going to be using them for our own wine. So we just kind of let them speak for themselves.
Yeah, all the farming is virtually the same, whether we're taking the fruit or if it's going somewhere else. We don't really, we're farming the best fruit we can. So there's not a lot of variability for who it's going to by any means. There's not any variable really.
What are the characteristics of your vineyard? What is the terroir here? What do you think is kind of notable?
We got a lot of pepper, seems like, on the Pinot. I don't know why. We do a lot of leaf removal though. Probably has something to do with it.
So we do a technical tasting with a group of growers or winemakers in the area every year, and
ours are always the darkest.
Ours are always the darkest Pinots. And
some people are doing different winemaking practices to emphasize the color and tannin and whatnot. And we're really not. We're doing just pretty basic, simple punch downs in a plastic fermenters and stuff. And we consistently for 3 at least years now have had the darkest Pinot there. So
we do 2 rounds of leaf removal though, and I think that has a lot to do with it. We get them a tan versus a burn. Do it early, let them get a tan, then it's like they've been in Hawaii for a couple months. So, I mean, it makes a little bit less work that we have to do in the winery. And it's pretty consistent, but yeah, like Pierre said, we get notes of like pepper and a lot darker. But I mean, we're not super deep soils here. We are old world, volcanic soils at this site.
Basalt based soils, but not in a Jory Nikaya kind of a sense. It's all really old alluvial soils. Very rocky alluvial soils.
Very rocky.
But old. They're eroded rocks, just an old alluvial. It's not like a valley soil because they're out of the glacial floods kind of, but not the Missoula floods though. We're right at the cusp of the Missoula flood area. So it's more like local glacial floods, I guess, is what has been. I'm a little bit of a geology buff, but talking to like the actual soil scientists, that's kind of what they've explained to me. It's an ancient flood.
I want to preface that one more time. As a kid growing up, we hated doing anything in the dirt because it's like you go to like plant mom's tree from Mother's Day, and you only need a hole this big, and it takes you an hour and a half because
it's got to be right there.
It's got to be right there, and there's a giant boulder like this size that you got to pull out.
But Mom says it has to be right there.
Yeah, lots and lots of rocks, and we run into that in our farming because we can't do any like under row tilling because there's too many rocks. It just beats up the equipment. I mean, the first time we go through and we mow, we use our crappy mower every year because you don't know if a rock got kicked around because they're just rocks coming out of our ears. Like you can see at the tasting room, like all those rocks came from
native
and around, right? Like nothing, and like
did over 100 years of farming.
There's these rock walls over here that were all sitting on top of the ground when we went to go build the tasting room. So we didn't dig any up. They're just on the surface, and you get down 6 inches and you run into another rock. So it's lots of rocks. But then it's kind of a running joke for us because we planted our other vineyards. They're more down valley floor, and we go through and we work the whole thing up, and it was a joke because we finally hit it. We finally hit a rock. We were like 3/4 of the way through the whole field because it was an old berry field, and like we went to go work it up, and we heard a ting, and we're like
on the equipment. Yeah.
Was that what we thought it was? And there was like one rock in the 20-acre field. And I'm like, you can't go 20 inches without hitting a rock around here. So yeah, it was quite different experience for us when we planted our first vineyard off-site. So yeah, it was interesting, but
a lot different.
Yeah, a lot different.
So you mentioned coming out of school in 2017 with this idea. Tell me about initial plan for what you were thinking of as the project, and then how it shifted and morphed as you move forward.
Oh.
I don't know if there was a plan.
There wasn't really a plan. Pierre got a harebrained idea to
make money,
to make wine because we had fruit. So there wasn't, it kind of just started as let's see where it goes.
We had a plan to make a few hundred cases. We didn't know how much to make. We made a few hundred cases of Gris, Rosé,
and Pinot.
And the Pinot, yeah.
We were in a converted garage that Mom and Dad used as their tasting room and storage area when they were making wine. So it's all of 800 square feet and 8-foot ceilings. So not your typical winery. I mean, we were in that space until last year, and we were making 1,500 cases in that space. We're pretty cramped, and we play a lot of Tetris down there, but it has worked because
keeps the overhead down.
Yes, it does. And we're kind of, we're farmers, so we look at things like, all the equipment. I was 25 and Pierre was 22 when we started it. So
Not exactly a lot of
capital rolling around. So yeah, and we started on a shoestring budget and we made 500 cases the first year.
yeah. Got good terms on the grapes
Yep.
from mom and dad.
Yeah. Very good terms.
Paid for them, but we got good terms. But
So that made it easier.
yeah,
But we still, I mean, I don't think we've bought anything new to date. We built a new building, but
yeah, the tasting room.
yeah, it's just, you got
Buy
to,
a lot of used equipment, tanks that need welding on them, pumps that need to be rebuilt, or anything like that we can do to fix it. Because we grew up fixing equipment on the farm, and winery equipment isn't that much different. It's usually has a manual that you can't understand, or whatever, has some nuances that you got to figure out. But equipment's equipment. So that has saved us a lot of money. We do anything we can ourselves.
yeah. I mean, even on the building here, we did a lot of the excavation. I did all the siding,
We did
the roofing, did the stonework around the outside,
Finish the concrete.
finished the concrete on the inside.
We did all the landscaping
I made the tables.
and the landscaping.
Yeah, so you kind of have to do as much as you can, and it keeps us busy. That is for sure. So yeah,
Don't necessarily make a lot of money, but we save a lot of money.
and are happy while we're doing it. That's the big thing. Yeah,
It's like the farmer motto, right?
it kind of is. Yeah,
Love that.
yeah,
How to save money.
yeah, yeah.
So tell me about introducing winemaking to all this, because obviously you mentioned farming background, farming education, all of that. You're ready for farming. Tell me about introducing winemaking and starting to make your own wine. What did you have to learn about winemaking, and how did the first couple of years go?
Oh, the first year was the roughest year we've ever had.
And not because of, it was 2017, so there's huge yield that year. So we went into our first winemaking year having made maybe a couple of barrels prior. And 2017, we had a plan to make
1,100 gallons.
Yeah, and we ended up making like 7,000 or 8,000 gallons because there was extra fruit, and it's like, okay, we have a winery license. Kind of just sat down on a Tuesday halfway through harvest, and was like, we got a lot of extra fruit, and by Thursday we had a plan to make all this extra bulk wine, and had tanks on their way, and had planned for a refrigerated truck to come in, and we made a whole lot of extra wine
That we weren't planning on doing it. So it was kind of trial by fire for sure the first year. And we learned a lot and decided we don't ever want to make that much wine again unless we're scaled up and we have more room. I think we could do that pretty easily now.
We could do it now.
But yeah, it was kind of crazy our first year. We were on a little tiny press, and I think Pierre and I pressed for 9 days straight in a little tiny basket press that we had, but we got it done. So, but yeah, implementing it is just been trial and error. I mean,
A lot of reading, a lot of accessing online resources, a lot of talking to the neighbors. Had a few contacts I did a couple of crushes, one at Wine by Joe, and then one in Blenheim, New Zealand. I don't have any contacts from Blenheim, but I do from Wine by Joe. I have a few people over there that I still talk to, that just with different questions and whatnot. But it's a lot of I don't know, not collaboration, but just friendly advice and helpfulness. But yeah, so I'm self-taught 100% on the winemaking.
I like to tell people it's the 2 G's, garage and Google. Helps a lot. There's a wealth of knowledge out there. We're just lucky enough to have the internet to be able to plug into it. I mean, it would have been a lot harder, 30 years ago or whatever,
for sure. Just being able to access the information is helpful.
In 30 years, they'll probably say the same thing too. So, yeah.
You had to go all the way to a computer to look it up?
I know, right? You couldn't just in your brain. Yeah. So.
Tell me about obviously the first year you made a lot more wine than you anticipated. A lot of chance for trial and error. Tell me about improvement. What have you noticed about in your winemaking that has improved in either technique or in output?
Pierre's the winemaker. I'm just the guy that gets told what to do, and I've learned a lot, like just winery everything beyond, but he makes the big decisions. So
I mean, I think I'm a lot more comfortable with being hands-off now. I think we started being hands-off because we didn't have any options, because we couldn't afford the tools to be more hands-on, I guess. And also didn't necessarily understand didn't have resources to talk to people about the different products that you can use and stuff. So started very hands-off, and much more comfortable with that now, because it's been, we're making perfectly fine wine. Like, why do we need to mess with it? So I guess if anything, I'm just more comfortable letting the wine be, and as long as we're farming clean, ripe fruit out in the vineyard, which we know how to do well, I don't have a lot of problems in the vineyard or in the winery if I'm starting with clean, ripe fruit. So that's the goal as much as anything. So yeah, it definitely makes my winery job a lot easier when we are able to raise good fruit. So yeah, I mean, not a hell of a lot has changed in the winery. Scaled up, I mean, we have nicer tanks now, and you don't have to climb inside them to wash them out, and things like that. But so our efficiency, I would say, has gone up, but our winemaking practices really haven't changed a whole lot.
I would agree. I think that, obviously knowledge is being gained. So like Pierre said, he's more comfortable being hands-off. We were hands-off because that's just the way we rolled when we didn't know any different.
Yeah, we didn't know what to do.
So we're self-taught. So it's kind of like, we're going to do this to the best of our ability. And
maybe it'll be a similar story for our kids. They'll go to school for winemaking and figure out why the hell they're doing.
Yeah, maybe.
Because I don't really know why we're doing it. That's just what the book says.
That's fine. But I like to tell people we let the grapes speak for themselves. I don't like to mess with it. As long as you do a good job up front. Pierre was saying it makes a great product. So, and I get the job of trying to sell it. So, keyword trying. We just hired a new tasting room manager, so we're pretty excited about that.
That's a big step.
Yeah. It's been nice.
Allow us to get out and farm more, concentrate on the grapes more, and concentrate on the wine more, and
gets me out of the office. It's been really nice. Yeah.
Maybe even have a day off.
Yeah.
One in March and one in July.
Yeah. It is kind of nice. We close our tasting room January and February. It's just we need some time to recoup, So it's nice. We get our weekends back for 2 months out of the year. It's really nice. It's when all the projects at our houses get done because they've been put off for the rest of the year. So yeah, I know.
So let's talk about this space. You mentioned obviously doing a lot of the work yourselves. Tell me about the idea for it, and why you decided to start it and when you started to build it, and kind of what you were going for. What was the idea here?
This is a snowball of an idea, actually. So, like we talked about earlier, we had a tiny little tasting room in Mount Angel. That's where we were at from 2018 until to when we opened up here. So 3 years we were down there.
1 year pre-COVID, one summer pre-COVID, and then
one really good
rocky chaos after that.
And so we started off the conversation about this because the plan and the goal was always to build a tasting room on site, because we're off site. We were right across from the library and the police station in Mount Angel. It's not a great ambiance for a tasting room, right? It worked. It was great. But we started off the conversation here of just doing like a lawn area to do tastings during the summer because we didn't want to afford to build a tasting room, and within 2 weeks it snowballed into this. So and we started construction on December of 2019, and then the world went crazy in the spring, and we're like, okay, well, we're starting construction right in the beginning of a world pandemic, so it was pretty interesting. We kind of just held on for the ride after that. I mean, we finished the tasting room. We didn't even know if we were going to be able to open, and that, so we ended up being able to open March of 2021 because things were opening back up. But
it was a good summer to open.
It was a good summer to open.
Everybody was
ready to do stuff.
To get out and do.
I kind of like to think about we started our business 3 times on the wine side. So when we first opened, and then
Mom and Dad really.
Yeah, it's
us twice.
Yeah, and it's so like we started our business and then we opened back up after COVID down at the other tasting room, and then we moved over here, and it's like it's been some ups and downs, but now we're here, and it's just a lot of work, but yeah, it's coming along. So,
and we have a functional building, but we'll never be done. I mean, we're constantly adding new projects and stuff to make it better and grow it out and stuff.
So tell me about, as it is right now, what were the main things you wanted, and what have been sort of the outcomes so far?
What did we want? We wanted a space that was functional. I mean, because it really wasn't that. It was a 110-year-old building down there.
That was our only experience.
Yeah, that was our only experience, right? It's like when Pierre and I started the winery, we had been accumulatively wine tasting once or twice. So it's we just we have a little slice of heaven is what we like to call it up here, and we just kind of wanted to share it and let people enjoy the view and have some good wine. So it's been it's always going to be a constant battle to let people know we're up here because we're kind of off the beaten path, and we're on the other side of the valley of where typical wine country is. We're getting there though. I think we're part of a
building.
Yeah, we're part of a wine group, a group of wineries called the Cascade Foothills Wine Growers Association, which, funny enough, is my mom started that group back in the 2002, 2003 or something like that. And then, they dropped out of it, but it continued. And then when Pierre and I started making wine again, we kind of said, hey, we want to join again. And they're like, oh, well, you have to have this, and this. And we're like,
kind of raise their hands.
And
they're like, their mom started this.
So I think they're kind of grandfathered in. So
going anywhere.
Yeah. So
kind of waved a few things for us.
Yeah. But it's been a good thing. I mean, I feel like we're gaining traction over here. I think there's, we get quite a few visitors that are like, oh, I was just passing through. And so I think we're gaining traction. People know we're here, and
the winery scene on this side is growing as well. So which helps.
There's 3 new wineries that joined the group this year.
Yeah.
So yeah, things are growing. So I think there's not a lot of focus, but there's a lot of grapes over here. There's a lot of grapes. There's just not a lot of wineries. There's thousands of acres over here. So yeah, I don't think a lot of people know that, but
certainly not the wine drinking public.
No, I don't think so.
It's all about Dundee, Newburgh, Mac area. So, but there's a lot of grapes over here.
Yeah, driving out here, there's no question about that. So with this space and with things opening back up post-pandemic, tell me about how you've used it so far and kind of future plans for what you'd like to do here.
We started off just I mean, we're open on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday. Might be extending that, depends. But we like to host events, or it's available to rent. And our bread and butter kind of is for events wise is rehearsal dinners. We're not quite doing weddings yet. But Friday nights are great because we're not open and they can be in here whenever they want. But I don't know, as it evolves, it's something we might want to work to. It depends on how we feel.
We want to always be open for wine tasting. We want wine tasting to be
That's our
the
focus.
main part of the business, but all the accessory things on the side certainly help with the bottom line. And I mean, running our own events too, having more of like organizing our own events, not necessarily
It's been,
renting to other people.
we put a lot of work into it, and it's been really nice to be able to host events because it's
Of our own.
of our own, because it's, we like to share it. We put a bunch of work into it, and it's nice to be able to share it. And like
Wine dinners and music events and
family gatherings, it's been great. We used to have to gather at grandma's house. We have a very, very large family, so it's like Christmas we would do at grandma's house, or Thanksgiving we would do at grandma's house, and everybody packs in there, and it's like 75 to 80 people in grandma's house, and it's like, okay, well, let's just do it at the tasting room, and it's kind of nice. Everybody fits, and yeah, it's been really nice. But going forward, I mean, I think our goal is to attract as many people out here to be able to share the space and move forward, but still stick to our roots and not let that get away from us. So it's an important part in my philosophy.
As you look ahead for the overall business, what goals have you not reached yet? What are you still looking to do vineyard-wise, winery-wise, space-wise?
we had a lot of growth goals for the vineyard. Some of those are getting tamped down, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Just by the overall market, of grape sales market, I suppose. But as far as a winery, I mean, I would love to have a purpose-built winery space. Would be fantastic. But I don't know. It's kind of a moving target on what our growth is for the wine production, I guess. It would totally just track our wine production tracks what we can sell each year, as closely as we can. 'Cause it's a quick and easy way to dig a grave for your cash flow. You make a whole bunch of wine and you're just sitting on it. So yeah, try and avoid that if we can at all costs. Yeah, I don't know what I would say it's a moving target.
As we add things, add projects, it's, we have our set goals, but like Pierre said, it's a little bit, it changes. So, it's like on the wine or on the vineyard side, it's kind of like, well, we're going to add a little bit and, we have this goal in our head, but you add one more block and you got to adjust. You have 4 years before you're like really adjusting to that block to, manage it. And then, we're trying not to overextend where we're at. We want to get to a comfortable spot, and we have a goal in our head, but it's moving because once you get everything into production, it might be overwhelming. It's like, we don't want to
Not need to go that far.
Yeah, and we may not, because we have a long ways before we're using all of our grapes for wine on the winery side. So, we could grow exponentially on that side of things before we're using all of our fruit. So that's kind of the nice thing about having your own fruit. You don't have to think about that side of things. So, on the winery side, it's just kind of, we're going to grow until we're comfortable. And, if it's 20 years down the road till we're comfortable, then that's when it is. We're more about organically growing on the winery side. The vineyard side is a little bit different. We kind of push the envelope as much as we can, because back to education and stuff is like, that's kind of that's our background, that's our wheelhouse, you know. Yeah, we're a lot more comfortable growing grapes, driving a tractor, than we are trying to sell a bottle of wine. So yeah, that's kind of our, and that's what we enjoy more too. So yeah, and I don't think Pierre thought about it when we decided to start a winery. Somebody's got to sell wine, right? You can't just make a bunch of wine. It's like, and that fell onto me. So it's kind of like, yeah, well, we didn't think about how much more time I would not be out there and in the office. And it's like, so, but we're making a shift, and we're hopefully going to be me less in the office, back where I want to be. So yeah, it'll be always on the up and up, right? Pierre always says, if you're not growing, you're dying. So
when it comes to selling wine, especially selling wine direct to consumer, what's that been like, having wine that you've made with your name on it? How has it gone, and how have you found success in selling?
It's honestly has been a great experience. I try and keep a low profile when I'm like here in the tasting room, because I feel like people get a little bit scared about telling you their actual opinion if they see your picture and the family picture and realize that's your last name, and oh, you're on that picture right there. And I'm like, it's not that we get it's been a great experience, because I mean, we make a great product, so people enjoy it, you know, especially now coming up here. The first comment is, oh, it's so beautiful up here. And I'm like, yeah, I always tell them, well, it looks like a lot of work to me. It's like, I know we get a little bit spoiled, because I mean, like, our offices here, we have a great view. It's like, sometimes we take it for granted a little bit, but selling wine it's fun when you're passionate about it. Like, I could talk about wine all day long. I could talk about grapes all day long. Stick me in a conference room with somebody, then you're not talking about wine, I'm going to say 5 words. Like, I'm not a very outgoing person. So it makes it easy when you're passionate about it. So yeah, I've had a great experience with it. Most of the people, we've kind of touched on it before, but most of the people in the wine industry, they're great. You know, we're a pretty small group, so and up here, people are always usually in a great mood, because they're drinking wine on a patio and they're having a great time. So there's not a lot of downsides to going wine tasting. So yeah, it's been a good experience. Yeah, I mean, there's always the back end of stuff. It's a good industry to be in. Yeah, it is.
So you talked earlier about some of the growth you're seeing in the area in terms of new wineries and things like that. So tell me about how you've seen this area change and develop, and your impressions of Oregon wine, how it's changed and developed in the time you've been sort of paying attention to it.
Oh, it's definitely grown. I mean, 12 acres was 15% of Oregon's Pinot Gris back in the day. And I would definitely say that mom and dad are pioneers on this side of the valley for sure. I mean, there's a couple other vineyards that are older than theirs. We like to joke around here that when my dad planted the grapes, my grandpa thought he was crazy, because everybody was row crop farming in the early 90s, and dad was planting grapes. And the running joke is now my uncles who took over the farm after my grandpa passed, uncles and cousins, they have about 800 acres of grapes now. So it's just kind of a funny tidbit that we like to, but there's definitely growth. I mean, there's more and more, like you said, there's more and more grapes going in. It's definitely a smaller community over here for sure. I mean, we all know each other, and we drive around enough as we see grapes going in that we don't know, and it's kind of like, oh, who's that? Yeah. It's like, let's drive in and talk to him, kind of thing. So, yeah, it's definitely. I think it's a lot of positive growth. I don't see a downside to it. I mean, yeah, there's there's more competition out there, but I look at it as friendly competition. I mean, we're all in the same boat, so there's not a lot of adverse emotions and stuff going on out there. There's, you know, I don't think I've had a bad experience yet, knock on wood. So that's been my experience. So.
Well, I'm curious what it's like working with each other as brothers. How is it being day in, day out business partners and brothers? How has that gone, and how do you see it grow? How do you see that relationship growing?
We're pretty good. Working with our parents is more
Challenging.
Yeah.
Pierre and I have always been eye to eye on, you know, how things should be ran, and
Good about not stepping on each other's toes.
yep, and I like to call it staying in your lane. You know, we all have our jobs that we're gonna do. I mean, it overmingles at times, and like it should. And we're both pretty easygoing and, you know, flexible. But like Pierre said, it's challenging working with. It's a very delicate balance, whether or not you're talking to your dad or your coworker or your business partner, and it's like, okay, well, I don't ever want to yell at my dad, but you know, usually it's the other way around, and it's like, okay, well, are you my dad or are you my coworker? And it took a while. You know, because they ran it as themselves for years, 30 years or whatever. And so now bringing us on board, it's kind of like, well, you can't.
It's involved.
You can't, yeah. And so Dad officially retired this year. And so he had been phasing out for 4 or 5 years. But it was a balance between, well, is he in or is he out? Is he in or out? And this year it's been great because he gets to do dad things, which is nice. But it's easy working with Pierre. It's been doing it for 8 years, going on 8 years, and it's like, I think I can only count on one hand how many times we've actually had an argument, so, which is good. But when you have the same goals and you think about things the same, it's Pierre's the gas, I'm the brake. Yeah, it's a good balance though. Somebody's got to be the gas, somebody's got to be the brakes. So, yeah, but that's kind of how it works.
We started, shared a bedroom when we were kids and grew up, and now we have a business together and together for forever.
That's all the questions that I have for the two of you. Anything I didn't ask that I should have? Anything we didn't cover today that you'd like to cover?
No, I mean, it's
Good. Cool.
Yeah, that's us.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much for sharing your stories with us, sharing this beautiful space with us. Congratulations on all you've accomplished here so far. And we'll go ahead and let you off the hook.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Sounds good.